Y'all, welcome to one of my favorite happy places, being out in the forest, out in the woods, in nature. We're going into that season, or we're in that season now, where Earth is starting to come alive. And this is a golden opportunity of sorts, not just for me personally, but for all of us who are exposed to this kind of blossoming of nature. But in any case, a big shout out to everybody who's been following me on Tribe by Noir, those of you who've been tuning in consistently on a weekly basis, soaking in the information, making the life changes you need to make. For those of you who are new, this is Tribe by Noir. I am Remsen Noir, head coach at Tribe by Noir. And everything that I do here, everything that I discuss, is all about deploying nutrition, training, and mindset techniques and strategies in order to achieve peak health, to live the life you really truly want to live and be in the body that allows you to do that. Whatever reaching peak health looks like for you. I'm here to provide the support and everything that I've learned in order to help you get there. This is what this is all about. I wanted to take some time out real quick to let y'all know that Tribe by Noir 3.0 has launched. This is the latest iteration with all the improvements, taking things on the platform to the next level. Not only do I provide training, diet plans, coaching calls, one-on-one coaching support, group coaching support, and all that, but I'm also offering community. Now, I do live streams for the public on a weekly basis, but that's not the only one. I also do member exclusive live streams. We go over meal planning. We get deep into training technique, how to maximize your training to get the goals that you want, right? We get pretty granular in those kind of streams. And it's a live call-in, right? So you can get on the voice chat, ask questions. We do a Q&A and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of support and camaraderie and valuable information that you can use from day one. So if that's something that you're interested in getting into, you want to take it to the next level, you want to get deeper into Tribe by Noir, well, I left a link in the description of this video for you to go and tap in and get started. Now, you can sign up and become a community member. You can sign up for coaching, and you can sign up for coaching with your own personal diet and training plans, as well as weekly one-on-one coaching calls with me personally. All right. So definitely take some time to check that out. And moving forward, we're going to get into the upcoming live stream. All right, y'all, welcome to the Monday Night Raw. Yes. How's everybody doing? Let me tune in. Let me check in with y'all in the comments. Look at that. We got the comments loaded up. There we go. Big shout out to y'all. That's right. We're talking about the sugar diet tonight. Miss D, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Yes, ma'am. All right. Camille, good to see you back in here. All right. Safi, what's going on? Good to see you back in here. The Naga. Good to see you in here. Absolutely. Tarina. All right. Yes, that's right. With the playlist. Y'all know I got to make it a vibe. Y'all know I got to make it a vibe. All right. Miss Cammy, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Absolutely. Hit that like button. Like the stream. If you like the stream or you have liked the stream. So y'all know I always deliver on the streams. All right, so definitely hit that like button. Let's run that up. All right. My mom is in the chat. What's going on? Good to see you in here. That's right. Anita, what's going on, Anita? How you doing? Good to see you in here. I don't think I see you on the schedule this week. So you're definitely checking with me. Let me know how things is going. Oh, what's this? If there's any veterans in the house, I would like to thank y'all for your service. Well, there you go. All right. Oh yeah, that's right. Because today's Memorial Day, right? Is that right? I'm probably not doing so well with keeping track of all the holidays and whatnot. But that's right. Service is a big component of my ideology. Service. I'm all about service. Absolutely. All right. Can we do it? Can we get into talking about the sugar diet? Are y'all ready? Because I had quite a few people in the chat that said, "Hey, what do you think about the sugar diet?" I said, the sugar diet? What the heck is the sugar diet? It sounds ridiculous. I'll look into it. I didn't really take it seriously until I think it was 3 or 4 people asked me about it. And then I'm like, is this like a thing? Is this a thing? Because I try not to absorb too much of other people's content. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to muddy up the I don't want to muck up the I don't want to muck it up. You know what I mean? My whole thought process and how I go about things. So I try not to have too many of other people's ideas floating around in my head. Right? So that adds to the authenticity of my approach. I don't know how deliberate that is. I think it's more so incidental, but fair enough. So let's talk about the sugar diet. The sugar diet essentially is what I've been talking about mostly, which is a raw fruitarian diet. There are 2 main schools of thought when it comes to the sugar diet, right? So you have like a sugar diet, and then you have a sugar fast, right? The sugar diet is essentially a diet where all of your food choices primarily are just carbohydrate, sugar-rich foods. Fruit, basically. The way that some people talk about it, all sugar's on the table. Fruits, fruit juice, candy, right? As long as there's no fat in it, right? Or very marginal, minimal fat, right? And basically, you just have these sugary foods throughout the day, right? And you eat until you're full, so you can really load up on these sugary foods. And then towards the end of the day, you move from your fruits and into more of like your starchy foods. Rice, potatoes, some legumes, some leafy green vegetables, things like this, right? Essentially like a high raw fruitarian diet. For whatever reason, people just decide to start calling it a sugar diet, which is quite amusing to me, right? The sugar fast is basically like a raw fruitarian diet, essentially, right? Where it's a diet where it's all just fruits and leafy greens. Not even really any nuts and seeds. It's just fruits and leafy greens. Some people, they don't even eat the leafy greens, which, I don't know about all of that, right? It's a bit overboard, right? But basically that's what a sugar fast is, right? It's kind of weird to call it a sugar fast because essentially sugar breaks a fast, but okay, fine, right? A sugar fast. In the same way that people would refer to a juice fast, a sugar fast essentially could be a juice fast, right? If you're just taking fruits and juicing them. So that's pretty much how that works, right? But essentially, it's just a rebranding of what I've been talking about a raw fruitarian diet or a high raw fruitarian diet. That's essentially what the deal is. So why has this become such a big thing? And is this like a real thing? Is this like a viable, legitimate thing? It is, but it depends on how you go about it, right? And people are learning, right? I would like to think I've contributed to that because a lot of people are actually kind of sounding like me recently. You have like a lot of people who are emphasizing, hey, sugar for weight loss and sugar for diabetes, right? Basically, if you have a diet where it's centered around sugar or just carbohydrate-rich foods, where basically the food is just exclusively carbs, what they call sugar, people are starting to talk more about how this improves insulin sensitivity pretty dramatically. This is a very good way of decongesting your liver, right? This is a very good way of dropping body fat. Right? This is a very good way of helping to reverse kidney disease and improve blood pressure and things like that. Now, of course, the results vary depending on what foods you eat. Right? So there's a big difference between getting your sugar from fruits versus getting your sugar from candy or things like this, right? So essentially, if all of your food sources are all just predominantly water and carbs or water and sugar, and you're keeping out the protein and the fat, right? Or overt protein, and overt fat. When I say overt, meaning like something that is, it is the dominant component in it is fat, or the dominant component in it is protein. So, for example, the dominant component in, let's say, chicken breast is protein, or the dominant energy source in an avocado is fat, right? And so that dominance is what people refer to as an overt form, right? So if you cut out the protein and the fats and you just focus on the carbs, essentially what this does is this points your metabolism in one direction, and you optimize for one specific pathway, and that is carbohydrate metabolism. So you're leaning all the way into deploying insulin and improving the way your body handles sugar or glucose, right? Typically, if you eat like a well-rounded kind of balanced diet where like you're getting an even amount of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, where it's not really lopsided, the macros are pretty even, like 30 and change, 30-something percent, 37%, 37%, something like this, right? Where you try to balance all of them. What happens is you get a mix of, when you eat, you get a mix of foods that increase glucagon, which are your dietary fats and proteins. And then you get foods like your carbohydrates that increase insulin. And so basically when you're eating fats and protein, both of these hormones are increasing together, right? So your pancreas is releasing glucagon and insulin together. Now, if you're insulin sensitive, you don't really have like insulin resistance issues and metabolic issues, fatty liver and all that type of stuff. Doing that there's not really much of a negative side effect of doing that, because these hormones are not just shooting up big time on you, right? You get a moderate rise. And so there's a balance between these two, right? Is that an optimal way to eat? Not necessarily, but it is more of like a normal kind of thing that we're used to, right? This is a thing that we were indoctrinated into, like as a child, right? So that just seems normal to me, like a balanced three-legged stool. Now, basically, if the glucagon is down and the insulin is up, your body adapts to all the carbohydrate consumption. So as you're fueling your body with just the glucose, your body adapts to that like it adapts to anything else, right? You eat a lot of fat, you get really fat adapted, to the point where your insulin's really low, your fasted blood sugar's really low, and then your glucagon and adrenal output is real high, right? And so you can drop a ton of weight and things like, you can drop a ton of weight. You can improve triglycerides and things like that, right? So there can be benefits of doing that, right? You just cut all your carbohydrates out. You reduce your protein to a more of a lower moderate form, and then you mainly just have like your dietary fats and leafy greens and things, a very low glycemic index, very low glycemic diet. And so you become more fat adapted, and so your body is more primed to really burn fat for energy through the ramping up and increase of lipolysis by deploying glucagon and tapping your adrenal glands to facilitate the increase in speed at which your body breaks down fat to use that for energy, right? Your body has to adapt to that. Otherwise, if your body doesn't increase the lipolysis and increase the adrenal output, you get fatigue, you get brain fog, you get kidney disease, you get fatty liver disease, you get increase in blood pressure, you get high triglycerides, and all that kind of stuff. So your body tries to protect you from that by ramping up the lipolysis so that the fat is being burned at a higher level so that you're not over accumulating it and getting overwhelmed with it, right? So your body, the only thing it's trying to do is just keep you alive. That's all it's trying to do. It's just trying to stay alive. And so your body will raise this hormone and lower this hormone and increase this enzyme and lower that enzyme and kick on this type of inflammation to signal this and that and whoop, 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 right? And your body basically does this in the pursuit of creating some type of homeostasis, some balance to adjust to whatever your most common habits are, right? The basis for human adaptation is basically adapting to your most common habits. That's why consistency is so important, right? Now, the inverse also happens with glucose, right? So people say, oh, so a keto diet, that works great, right? So I don't even necessarily have to do a high carb diet either. I can just do keto. You can. Problem is, with the keto thing, the longer you do it, you get diminishing returns. And a lot of people don't really do it effectively either. So with leaning into fats for energy and just really cutting out your carbs, your body can adapt to this over time, but the problem is that the body isn't really designed to run on fat perpetually for energy, right? So out of the 3 macros, you have carbohydrates, which is your primary source of energy. Everything in your body runs on sugar, right? Your brain, your nervous system just runs on sugar, right? And as a matter of fact, in order for your body to use fat for energy, it has to convert it into glucose. Otherwise, it just gets stored and just piles up in your body. All right. So basically, if you eat fats and carbs together, your body will store the fats and use the carbs for energy. And so basically, if you're eating a high amount of carbs and you're also pairing that with fats, if the fats are high enough, well, you just keep storing the fat you're eating. So you can end up gaining body fat, right? So with the sugar diet, it's basically like, all right, well, you know what? We'll just cut the fats out altogether. So therefore, we're just exclusively burning the carbs for energy. This doesn't really work long-term for fats. And the reason why is because your body doesn't store fat in a wide variety of ways that it stores carbs. And it doesn't burn it that effectively either. It's just not really the ideal use of energy. It's an auxiliary form of energy that your body can tap into when there's no available carbs. There's a hierarchy. And your body doesn't really use, or your body's not supposed to use protein for energy. Protein is really meant to be the building blocks of new cells. Right? Your body can store fat primarily in subcutaneous fat stores, visceral fat, and in your liver. Right? 3 primary ways your body can store fat. Carbohydrates, your body can break down carbs into glucose, and you can store that glucose in the form of glycogen inside all of the lean tissues in your body, right? All of your skeletal muscle, and inside fat cells, and inside your liver. So your body has way more options and a capacity to store glucose. The same is not the case with fat. And as a matter of fact, if you store like more than 1% fat inside muscle tissue, that basically creates diabetes. It'll make you significantly more insulin resistant. It disrupts mitochondrial function big time. So this is the issue you run into, right? So basically the way that your body is set up is that if you eat a high amount of fat, it'll suppress your appetite to get you to stop eating. So your body goes, whoa, 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 too much, too much, too much. It will shut off your appetite, right? And then that glucagon really kicks on. What your body is essentially trying to do is force you to stop eating the fat, shut off your metabolism, not your metabolism, but shut off your appetite by suppressing ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and increases leptin. That's when people are like, when I eat fats, it keeps me fuller for longer. Yeah, because your body's trying to get you to stop eating in order to avoid getting like metabolic congestion and wrecking your health. This is your body defending you. Right? So you're like, oh, the fats are more satiating. And it's like, but that's a defense mechanism. This is your body manipulating your brain chemistry to get you to stop taking in more. And then the lipolysis kicks on, and then, that whole thing, you get more glucose from the fat. With carbohydrates, it's a completely different thing, because basically you can eat carbs with no restrictions. If your fats are low enough, you can eat carbs with no restrictions. You can't really do that with fat, because your body doesn't have the capacity to store fat in that way. When I explain this to people, I said, now imagine like you're at a shopping mall and you bought a bunch of stuff, right? And then you're waiting on the checkout line. You want to check out, but there's several people in front of you. Back in the day, before like tap to pay and debit cards and credit cards and things like this and cash back rewards, all this, before all that, right? If you wanted to use like a bank card, there was like this machine where there was like a paper, there's like this carbon paper, and you put your card in it and you put the paper on top and they slide this metal thing across. And what it would do is it would use the carbon paper to basically copy the card number onto the paper, right? And then that paper would be the basis to be able to charge your card. Right? Now, this whole mechanical apparatus, this takes a lot longer than just swiping a card. Right? So the line, it takes longer for the line to move because the checkout process takes longer because you go through these extra steps in order to be able to use that bank card. Right? And then if it's cash, well, basically you give somebody cash, and what they got to do is receive the cash, do some math to know how much change to give you back. Right? And the person receives the cash, and then they count through it to make sure they gave them back the right amount of cash, and blah, blah, blah. This extends the checkout process. Now, we got a card, and you're out. Right? Fats is like, if you have a diet that's relying on fats, that's like going through this extra long checkout process. And if the checkout process takes longer, then the line gets longer over time because people are not checking out quicker than the line is growing. Right? So people are entering the line quicker than people are leaving the line. This is essentially what you run into when you have like a fat dominant keto diet or things like this. So this is the issue that a lot of people have. So they get the skyrocketing cholesterol. They get weird blood pressure issues, kidney issues, and things like this, right? Because it ends up leading to this metabolic congestion, right? Because people think like, oh, I can just eat fat unlimited, fat and protein unlimited. Doesn't work that way. Carbohydrates, it's different because it's like tap to pay. You take your card out, or you don't even have to take your card out, which means you don't even need to reach into your wallet. You just take your phone, tap to pay, and you leave, right? Scan your phone, and walk out. Checkout process is done. No cash back, no swiping, no digging around for things, just in and out, right? So it moves the checkout line a lot quicker. So that line doesn't grow out of control, and the next thing you know, you have a line, running out the door of the store. Right? So that's essentially how your metabolism works. The biggest problem that people face when it comes to things like diabetes, fatty liver disease, high blood pressure, kidney disease, obesity, etc., it's a traffic jam, right? Your body's not able to really utilize the resources quicker than they're taking them in. So you get this pile up. So should you do like a sugar diet? This is like a viable thing. I don't like calling it a sugar diet because it's not really actually what it is, right? You're not just like getting a bag of sugar and just doing like tablespoons of sugar in the mouth, and that's your meals. That's not, it's a very crude way to describe this way of eating. A fruitarian diet okay, is what they're really talking about. For whatever reason, they decided instead of just calling it fruitarian, they want to call it a sugar diet. Right? Now, is this viable? Well, the answer is yes. This is my primary thing that I suggest to people. Have a fruit-dominant diet. Your diet doesn't have to be exclusively fruit. All right? I personally don't really put people on fruit exclusive diets where you swear off everything and you only eat fruit. I don't really particularly make diet plans like that very often. If I do, it's going to be more so in the short term. Right? I take a more conservative approach because I basically want to hit the full spectrum of nutrients that the body needs in order to maintain that balance. I don't want to necessarily lean in too aggressively in one direction, right? I don't really particularly want to do that, people, right? I'm all about risk mitigation and basically maximizing upside while reducing the downside as much as possible. So I'm more in favor of a high raw fruitarian diet. If you do it like that, that's when it becomes more viable long term, right? Because you can basically just have your fruits throughout the day, right? So you have your fruits in the morning, early morning, mid-morning, late morning, early afternoon, mid-afternoon. And then late afternoon is where you have your final meal of the day. That's where you get like more of your sweet potato, more of your chickpeas or pinto beans or black beans or lentils, your leafy green vegetables, your onion, bell pepper, garlic, herbs, spices, things like this, whole grains like basmati rice or quinoa, kasha. Throw some tofu in there if you want, this type of thing, right? So basically, you carb up all throughout the day, carbs, carbs, carbs. And then you can have your fats in with your last meal of the day. So that's one way of doing it. However, when it comes to the fats with the last meal of the day, you don't want to go crazy with the fats in the last meal of the day either. All right? You don't want to go crazy. Just because you didn't have all the carbs and throughout the day, you didn't have any of the fats throughout the day doesn't mean you pile them on really heavy at the end. Not like that. As a general rule for me, a good guideline is with your final meal of the day, if you haven't been eating any of your fats throughout the day, you can have like about anywhere from 25 to 45 grams of fat towards the end of the day, right, with that final meal. All right, so that's one option. But it depends on what your goal is. You may want to narrow that down even more to the point where with that final meal, you only have maybe 30, 35 grams of fat with that meal. But the fat source itself matters, right? So for example, let's say if your fat source is like some type of nuts and seeds. So you're eating like whole nuts and seeds. Now, if you're eating whole nuts and seeds, the fat absorption can be a lot lower versus like if you ate an avocado where the fat absorption is a lot higher. Right? Or you have that final meal of the day, that savory meal, and you put oil on it, where pretty much if it's just an oil, you get like 100% absorption from that. So the fat source matters. Is this fat source rich in omega-3 essential fatty acids? Is it rich in vitamin E? Is it rich in vitamin K? This kind of thing. So the fat source you pick does matter. Right. So I'm not really partial I don't really put oil in diet plans because if you're going to put fat in your diet, it could be a much more beneficial source. So I would rather the fat source be something like peanuts or cashews or almonds or avocado or tofu, even though tofu is not necessarily high in fat. Right. It's not really a fat-rich food necessarily. But it's a unique legume because it has more fats in it than typical legumes have. Right. Hemp seeds. I'm a big fan of hemp seeds, right? So this kind of thing. So it depends. If you're a diabetic, I think with that final meal, you can have about 20, 25 grams of fat, maybe even 30 for that day, and I would cap it out at that. And then it depends on the overall size of the meal. Now, what you can also do is you can have all of your fruits and things like that early morning, mid-morning, late morning, and then have your fruits early afternoon, and then mid-afternoon, you have more like a starchy meal, right? Baked sweet potato, broccoli, chickpeas, this kind of thing, right? You have a meal like that, and then you have your fats separately at night, later in the evening. And that's where you can have like an avocado and an ounce of like sunflower seed kernels, for example. Right? You have that separately from your other meals. And that would you would have those fats, let's say about an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours later after you've eaten all of your carbs for the day. It's another option. So it's a sugar diet, essentially, just with the fats tacked on to the day at the end before you go to bed. Right? So that's another option there to do it. Then the sugar fasting option. So let's say you do Monday is like a full day of eating, like I just described with the fruits, early morning, mid morning, early afternoon, and then starchy meal late afternoon, and then a couple hours after that you have like the avocado and the sunflower seed kernels, right? You can do that one day, and then the next 3 days it's just all fruits and like leafy green vegetables. That's it. Fruits, leafy green vegetables throughout the day. Okay? No nuts and seeds, no starches, no none of that. Just the fruits. So Monday you have a full day of eating, and then you do what they call a sugar fast, which is basically just a raw fruitarian diet. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? Just the fruits. And then Friday, you have a day of eating that's similar to Monday. And then after that Friday, you repeat. And then you have your raw fruitarian days of eating, Saturday and Sunday, and then repeat back to Monday, full day of eating. It's actually what your week can look like. Or you cannot obey the calendar at all, right? So you can do full day of eating Monday, fruitarian Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, full day of eating Friday, fruitarian or raw fruitarian, fully raw fruitarian, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then full day of eating Tuesday, and then fruitarian, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then repeat, right? One on, three raw, one on, three raw. So there's a variety of different ways to do it. And then it depends on your training schedule. It depends on your goals. Are you trying to build muscle, or you just want to drop body fat as quickly as possible? Are you trying to reverse diabetes, right? Like, what's the goal? What is your goal, right? Do you want to reverse fatty liver disease, this type of thing, right? What's the goal? So that is pretty much in a nutshell what it would look like, right? So if you want to know what a sugar diet is, that's essentially what it is. They're just calling what I've been recommending. They're just calling it something else. Right? Mine's a bit more nuanced because I'm more so focused on food choice and micronutrients. So why is this becoming such a big thing? What's this about, right? Like, people have been doing the whole raw fruitarian thing or the high raw fruitarian thing for years. I'm not the inventor of this. I've never claimed to be the person who originated this whole thing. I'm not at all. People have been doing a raw fruitarian or a high raw fruitarian diet way before any of us were born, right? This way of eating has been around for thousands of years. This isn't new at all. So what's with the whole sugar diet fad thing and the rebranding? What's that about? Well, this is a response to the keto and carnivore diet, because basically you had a keto diet. People were running that, and people started having all types of issues on a keto diet. It started going off the rails. People were having a lot of problems with it. Their cholesterol was blowing up on them. They were having liver issues, like elevated liver enzymes, and they were having kidney issues, heart palpitations, and chronic dehydration, low electrolytes, and then the weight was like, the weight loss was stagnant, and then when they went back to try to introduce carbs back into the diet, the weight would come back super quick, and they'd be gassy and bloated and all of this. And so basically, it was like people are realizing the keto diet kind of wrecked my metabolism. So where do I go now? Well, a lot of people, they said, let's double down. Let's move from a diet that is dominant in fat to a diet that is more so dominant in protein and fat, right? So then people said carnivore diet. So there was just meat all day, right? Meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And some people were putting like eggs and milk and stuff, right? So it was like an acidic, kind of an acidic, funky diet, right? Milk and butter. People were eating sticks of butter and drinking a half gallon of milk and eating all kind of meat and animal testicles and liver and this and that. And, this started blowing up on people, right? And this started hitting people even worse than the whole keto diet thing. So a lot of people have been dropping off. A lot of people have been having health issues with it. Cholesterol up into the 300s, 400s, right? Heart palpitations, brain fog, fatty liver issues, right? Elevated liver enzymes, kidney issues, high bun, creatinine levels in the kidneys, breaking out in rashes, skin issues, all types of stuff, body odor. It was getting ugly, right? Gas, constipation, diarrhea, and then undulating from diarrhea and constipation, diarrhea, constipation, diarrhea, constipation, diarrhea, constipation, right? Sitting on the toilet, fighting for your life, heart palpitations, dry mouth. It's just going off the rails, right? So now where do you go? What do you do? Man, those vegans, they may have a point. But those raw vegans, those raw fruitarians that we've been making fun of for the last several years, we want to follow some of their strategies and diet tips, but we want to call it something else. Can't call it a fruitarian diet. No, we're not gonna give those skinny, emaciated, weak, scrawny fruitarians any credit. We're not gonna do that. No, we're not gonna call it a fruitarian. No raw vegan. No, we're not gonna do that. Let's call it a sugar diet. I don't know if people actually said this in their minds. I'm just kind of imagining like this is the thought process behind the scenes. I don't have any evidence for that at all, right? But I just see the patterns and whatnot. Even if nobody's going to admit that anyway, even if I was like dead on with that. But just looking at the trend, because I'm like, this is a little too close. Where it's like, oh, what are you eating today? Well, I'm eating fruits and juicing and blah blah. All right, yeah, it's just fruits, just fruits. So this is what happens. So basically, the pendulum has swung. Reality is a stubborn thing, right? Universal law, it's very powerful. Universal law always has the final say. And, look, human beings are going to have to capitulate to universal law. And you had a certain subset of human beings that were saying, hey, we're apex predators, we're carnivores, we're lions, tigers, and bears, right? We're the kings of the jungle. And that's why when we go to the grocery store, we buy a carton of milk, burgers, packs of cheese, chicken breasts, chicken legs, and like pork sausages and eggs. That don't seem too apex predator-ish to me, but okay. But at some point in time, a human being will have to learn they are not a lion, they are not a tiger, just a human being, right? I don't think you want to be a lion anyway, because there's certain behaviors that lions engage in and it gets real. And I mean lions, how they deal with each other, right? All of these apex predator men, I don't think you want to be out here fighting, literally getting into fights to the death to be able to mate with a woman and have a baby. I don't think you want to do that. Right? Where a woman just going to sit back and watch two dudes kill each other, and whoever comes out on top, well, that's whose baby I'm having, right? So, Universal law steps in. But that's where this is coming from. Let me catch up with y'all in the comments right quick. But you said they don't want to admit that they were wrong. I mean, look, reality, let me tell you something. Reality will cause you to bend the knee. It is what it is. How to get rid of my father's blood pressure as a raw fruitarian. I think he meant fruitarian. How to get rid of your father's high blood pressure. What do you mean? Is he a raw fruitarian and he has high blood pressure? Is that what you're asking me? Your boy. It's going on. Good to see you in here. Big dog knows his stuff. True. What's going on? Good to see you in here. That's right, Anita. Yeah, we got to get you on. Okay. Oh, he is a raw. So he is a raw fruitarian and has high blood pressure. Oh, can I use fruits to help him? Oh yeah, like you'll improve your blood pressure real quick doing a raw fruitarian diet. I mean, like you do like a raw fruitarian diet, you fix your blood pressure in like a week. Probably less than that, or like 3 days. It works. It works real quick. It works insanely quick. So yeah, basically, it's a great detoxifier. And typically, if you detoxify your body, your blood pressure will come down. Your blood pressure basically is the check engine light, comes on to let you know, hey, I'm gonna tighten up this cardiovascular system to increase the circulation here, so we can get some things moving. Your blood pressure increases to do two things. Number one, faster transport of oxygen and nutrients to your cells in order to sustain their life cycle. Number two, faster removal of intracellular waste from your cells out through your lymph system and out through your kidneys. That's why your blood pressure increases, to facilitate those two things. Right? Deliver more nutrients and oxygen to your cells and remove more waste faster out of your cells and out of your body. Right? That's why your blood pressure increases. There are other peripheral issues too, like chronic dehydration. If you're dehydrated, your blood plasma will diminish. And as your blood plasma contracts, so does your cardiovascular system. Your veins will also contract, right? There'll be vascular constriction. Because if you're going to have low blood volume or low blood plasma, well, you can't maintain the same dilation of your vascular tissues, because that's going to drop your blood pressure too low. And if your blood pressure drops too low, then it's lower rate of circulation. And that leads to fatigue, lethargia, brain fog, and you could just pass out, right? Because your cells and your brain is not getting enough oxygen, right? So that's why. So basically, they expand and dilate appropriately. On a raw fruitarian diet, basically you do a raw fruitarian diet, you're flushing your body with malic acid, citric acid, vitamin C, B vitamins, potassium, magnesium, and manganese, to name a few. All of these things work together to improve and maintain optimal quality of your smooth muscle tissues that line your organs and your vascular tissues. It protects the elasticity of these tissues. All right. And that's one of the reasons why it's so effective for improving your blood pressure. Now, throwing the leafy green vegetables in there is also really important. And the reason why is because with your green leafy vegetables, you can get things like iodine, selenium, vitamin K, boron, zinc, chromium, right? You get a lot of different things. More than that. I'm just using those things like vitamin E, omega-3 essential fatty acids, right? Vitamin A, right? Carotenoids, right? Alpha carotene, beta carotene, etc. And then chlorophyll, right? You also get an abundance of copper, right? Iron. So there's a lot that leafy green vegetables give you. So those are important to do. If you're going to do like a fruitarian diet, I'll say if you could do all fruits, that's fine. But I would at least get in like around 5 to 7 ounces of leafy greens. You don't need a whole lot of greens. You don't have to load up the greens like crazy. You don't have to do all that. But just like around 5 to 7 or even like 8 ounces of like leafy green vegetables, tender leafy green vegetables, right? So that's going to be things like your kale, spinach, arugula, red butter, lettuce, watercress, chard, right? These type of things. All right. Look at that. I'm making good on the time tonight. We're running a tight ship tonight. I'm sitting here drinking my ginger tea after my last meal. I finished my eating for the day. You know what I'm saying? I'm on it. I've been carved up today, feeling good. Spent a lot of time in the woods, getting out in the scenery. Does a lot for my mental health in these trying times. Because it's hard out here, okay? It's not, it's not easy all the time. Sometimes it gets hard. What's the best practice to rid the body from lymphedema? There's not really necessarily one practice, right? But basically, lymphedema essentially is your body is accumulating water or increasing interstitial fluid, basically in an attempt to be able to dilute toxins in your cells or in your body, and trying to really dilute that and streamline it through your lymphatic system. But there's some congestion going on in your lymphatic system, right? Chances are this is something going on in your kidneys, right? So if you're dealing with like lymphedema, chances are that's an indicator of like a kidney issue, right? Some inflammation or congestion in your kidneys, right? This could be dehydration. This could be just way too much fat saturation in the blood. This could be a result of chronic dehydration. There could be a variety of different things. In order for me to know for sure, right, I would have to talk to you more further about it to get a fuller picture. But if I had to guess and speculate, that's what my speculation would be. So a high raw fruitarian diet is very effective. And you can also pair that with different herbs, right? So you can do, let's say, ginseng tea first thing in the morning, right? You can do burdock root tea in the morning or at night before bed, right? You can use things like turmeric as a seasoning in your food, basil, nettle, parsley, right? These things are protective of your liver, help to detoxify your liver. They're protective of your kidneys, help to reduce inflammation in your liver and your kidneys, right? So those are some options there as well. So that's essentially, I think, what I would say about that. I think that if you deploy those things, you would see significant benefits and results from doing that. Where to buy burdock root? I typically get my burdock root from Frontier Co-op. That's where I've been getting it. If anybody has a better suggestion that I should know about, definitely drop it in the comments or email me. Let me know. All right. What other kind of questions you got for me? So yeah, I'm I'm gonna do a little bit more digging in the whole sugar diet thing. I don't know who started it. Like, I don't know really where that came from. People just asked me to look into it, so I did. I did a brief dive into it. And as soon as I saw, people were like, "Oh, you just eat fruit throughout the day." I'm like, "Oh, this is what I've been saying for years." I'm like, okay. And what's funny is too is that people who know me, they know that I said eventually everybody comes over to my side, right? So like with the low volume, high intensity training thing, right? I was like, yeah, eventually people capitulate. The high raw fruitarian thing where people are like, oh, it's too much sugar, it's gonna give you diabetes, it's gonna mess up your liver, your teeth gonna fall out, whoop, whoop, whoop. And then several years later, people talk about sugar diets. So I'm like, this is this is what happens, right? The capitulation is happening. We're seeing it in real time, y'all. I gotta do like a little bit more of an update. My next meal prep stream is some things I want to talk about. So what I've been doing is I've been hitting the pineapple juice hard. Pineapple juice and like grapefruit juice. And like, so basically I'll wake up like first thing in the morning, right? And hit the fruit juice. That's like a way of hydrating first thing in the morning, right? It'd be like, and what I'll do is I'll juice either like a whole pineapple and just drink that. And it'll be like 24 ounces or something like this, just straight pineapple juice. I'm actually going to prep some more tonight. But I'm not eating tomorrow though. But, so I don't know, am I going to prep some more tonight? I may wait till to do it tomorrow because I'm not drinking pineapple juice tomorrow. It'd be the next day after. But I've been doing that. That is absolutely phenomenal for improving digestion and improving blood flow. I've been juicing and using the juice as a pre-workout, right? Because I cut caffeine. I cut caffeine out. Cutting caffeine out is like one of the best things you could do too if you really want to regulate your adrenal function, your energy levels, all that type of thing. Because you can, if you're doing the caffeine for too long, the longer you do it, it becomes a crutch. To the point where you don't really know how energized you actually are naturally if you keep leaning into the caffeine. So like, for example, if you want to get to bed earlier in the day, even drinking caffeine in the morning can mess up your sleep cycle. So cutting out caffeine is actually really beneficial because caffeine also artificially curbs your appetite. So if you need to eat more in order to naturally energize your body, well, caffeine suppresses your appetite and makes it more difficult to eat. And so it kind of skews how you perceive your real energy levels to be, right? Not to say I'm entirely against caffeine because I'm not, right? But it's like, for example, for me, y'all know my thing is alternate day fasting. And so with the alternate day fasting, during a fast, the caffeine can be very viable to use, right? Because essentially caffeine helps to kick on glucagon and increase lipolysis to use fat for energy, which is really important during a fast. You don't really want to drag your feet when it comes to converting fat into glucose during a fast. Okay, because that just makes your fast harder to do. Right. My man, Ricardo, what's going on, brother? Coach, I got my second bag of nettle, seed, and leaf from someone, but there was some static effect with it. Felt like some magnetic effect to it. What do you mean? Like when you put your hand in the bag? You mean like this static when you put your hand in the bag? You felt like static on your hand when you put your hand in the bag? Because I don't think I've heard of something like that before. Yeah, you gotta fill me in on the details about that. You gotta let me know about that. Makes me wonder if they're listening to your lives. I had people book calls with me just to ask me about like how I run my business and like how I coach people. I had people just like fishing for information. The reason why I say that is because, well, if you look them up, you realize they already have like a coaching business or something like that. So I've had people do that. But yeah, I mean, you know, hey, look, if people are putting out the right information, I'm fine with that. I don't really mind if people repeat things I say or copy me, because if it's going to help people and improve people's lives, I'm like, hey, that's good news to me. I'm not mad at it at all. Now, if you're getting it wrong, that's a different story, right? If you're gonna repeat things I say or get it right, or you know, use some of my methodology, just make sure you're accurate with it, right? You know, I'm an open book. I put out a lot of important information. I give away a lot of free information. I don't really gatekeep information. I'm not stingy. You know, if you would say, hey, you know, I got people that I coach and I want to kind of gear them in more of the direction that you do, and you know, what are some pointers you can give me about how to construct diet plans and have people do a high raw fruitarian this and that, I'll tell you. Right? Like, I'm not stingy with the information. I'll tell you. Pretty open book. I've been using the red onion. Yo, red onion is my jam. Red onion is my jam, y'all. Did I want to add anything else to the sugar diet? What else did I want to add to it? Oh yeah, people ask me a couple of questions. They say, hey, will fruit rot my teeth? Because apparently some people, they have issues with their teeth. They've been doing like a raw fruitarian diet and they're having tooth issues. So, will fruit rot your teeth? Simply put, no. Tooth infections, the wearing of the erosion of your tooth enamel, gum infections, things like this. This is a result of bad bacteria that is sitting in your gums and basically eroding your oral health over time. Right? It's not the sugar that's the problem, it's the bacteria. So practicing good oral hygiene, right? So you may want to like rinse with clove. Right? You may want to do a clove rinse and some coconut oil pulling. Right? Coconut oil is antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal, which you need likely in order to, you know, rehabilitate your oral health. Clove is also antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral. Clove is powerful. It's a powerful cleaner, strong astringent. Right? So you can rinse your mouth with that. Now, if you're fighting like a bacterial infection, you're really trying to improve the quality of your oral health. This is not a thing that you just do once a day or twice a day, right? You would have to do this at least 3 times a day. Because the bacteria and fungus can grow back in your mouth within 8-hour intervals. Maybe even shorter than that. All right? So you got to really stay on it to eliminate that bad bacteria. You don't really want to use things like peroxide, alcohol, Listerine, things like this, because they kill the good bacteria also. You don't want to kill the good bacteria in your mouth. You want to kill the bad bacteria in your mouth. All right, so that's why you'd want to do it in a more natural way. The coconut oil, and you add in a little bit of peppermint oil, that's a bit of an easier way to do it. You can do that several times a day. All right. That's what I would say. It's not the fruit. It's basically you have bacteria lodged inside your gums, and it's just wrecking your oral health. Also, what I will say in addition to that is gut health. A fruitarian diet, right? However, you may want to diversify a bit. You may want to do coconut oil. You may want to mix in some berries in there, chia seeds, flax seeds, things like this. Get more fiber in your diet to really bind up bad bacteria, right? To help to eliminate some of that. And then, the coconut yogurt is a good probiotic. And then other fermented foods. Okay. Kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles. And my lady just put me on to olives. The olives is too much for me. I don't want to eat fermented olives, right? But there's promise in that. Miso, right? Miso paste, miso soup, and kombucha, which is basically fermented black tea. So these things help to improve and increase your gut microbiome by adding in more good beneficial gut bacteria, good gut flora, right? And then in addition to that, you can take a probiotic. If you do take a probiotic, typically you want to take a probiotic that is like 60 billion CFU and like 10 to 12 strains. 10 to 12 strains. Right, so you get like a really potent and diverse probiotic. All right. And that can work wonders for your gut microbiome. As someone who lives in a colder climate, I try to maximize my food storage, so I've been pickling and fermenting beets, carrots, turnips, etc. What is your thoughts on acidic foods like that? It's a good question. So basically, your fermented foods, are they acidic? Kinda, but not really. They're alkalizing inside your body, right? Probiotic foods in particular, they're alkalizing because when you improve your gut microbiome, that makes it easier to alkalize your blood. So basically, the beneficial gut bacteria, the probiotics in your gut, produce something called postbiotics, and these postbiotics essentially are different chemical compounds that they synthesize and release back up into your body that provide a wealth of different benefits. One of them being a better pH balance. Right? So, is it an acidic food? I guess technically, yeah. But is it alkaline forming in your body? Also, technically, yes. All right. However, this shouldn't be just foods that like you only eat, right? If I lived in a colder climate and I didn't really have access to fruits, I would basically just have like a starchy diet. It would be like porridges and stews and soups. That's essentially what my diet would be. Porridges and soups and stews. That's what my diet would be. It would be potatoes and oats and rice, and I'd be eating a ton of potatoes and carrots. Basically just root vegetables, tubers, and things like this, right? And like legumes. It would be whole grains, tubers, and legumes with leafy green vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, collards, and vegetable stock, with an abundance of herbs and spices in the pot. That's essentially what my diet would look like, right? If I didn't have fruits and things like that, and I lived in a colder climate. What's going on, my man Juan? Would you recommend to avoid added sugar as much as possible? I've seen some people who add some cane sugar to their smoothies. Yeah, I mean, I add cane sugar. So, like, I'll add, like, raw sugar cane or agave to things and stuff sometimes. So, like, would I recommend avoiding added sugar? Generally, no. But under certain circumstances, maybe. There could be a benefit to that. It depends, right? Like, if you're dealing with, like, let's say you have, like a bacterial infection in your gut. Would it be a good idea to avoid added sugar at that point? Yes. Yes. If you were having like skin breakouts or rashes or something like that because your gut's not handling the added sugar, or should you avoid it at that point? Yeah, I would say so. If you were looking to really detox your gut and your body as much as possible, to really flush out as much toxins and whatnot as possible in your body, and you were battling some type of like candida or SIBO or something like this, at that point, should you like, would it be a good idea to eliminate added sugar? Yes. Yes. So there are certain circumstances where it would be a good idea. Do you consume mushrooms in your livet? That's clever. Instead of diet, it's livet. I like that. Okay. If so, are you dehydrating them? Yeah, I add mushrooms. Yeah. Am I dehydrating them? No. No, I'm not doing that. Basically just boiling and dicing. Or just putting it in salads and just eating it raw. Right, that's typically what I do. All right. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to wrap it up there. I think I got to all the questions and whatnot. I'm going to keep it tight tonight. I'm not going to hold y'all up too late. You know what I'm saying? Because I know I'll be keeping y'all on here for an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours and all of that. And I keep saying, I ain't going to hold y'all too long and end up doing it anyway. So now I'm being more clear and concise. I'm keeping it tight. Because I keep telling y'all, hey, you get to bed earlier is so important. And I got y'all up all night. Massive hypocrite. I'm going to stop doing that. So yeah, but basically I think I covered it all. Got to all y'all questions. Yeah, we good. All right. Well, anyways, appreciate y'all for tuning in to the Monday Night Raw. I will catch y'all in the next live stream.